Hi, friends. Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. There is so much going on, a lot to talk about on this episode, and I hope you can give me a little bit of your time because we're going to spend about 45 minutes here going through the events of the last 24 hours. Hopefully, I can offer you a little context, a little clarity, maybe clear up some confusion about a few things, and get you all caught up on where the conversation is going. On this episode, the Air Canada Flight Attendants have reached a tentative deal with Air Canada. That's good news, but not before a whole bunch of stupid stuff happened yesterday. We're going to talk about that on this episode. Yesterday, a couple of big summits. Well, one big one and one that was just a dud. In Washington, President Trump, President Zelensky, and most of the European Union, along with the head of NATO, all met at the White House, and they all agree that was a good first step towards achieving peace in Ukraine. So I've got some great news when it comes to the war between Russia and Ukraine. On this episode, you're going to hear some great audio. I'm also going to talk about what happened with that by-election last night in Alberta. Oh, actually, you know what? Before I even get there, the meeting that was kind of a dud was our Prime Minister and the Premier of Ontario. I don't know what the two of them were thinking. Maybe they overplayed it, and maybe now they should be walking back what our expectations should have been, but it seemed like kind of a dud. So I'll play you exactly what I mean coming up on this episode. And like I said, I'm going to have Pierre Poilievre. Let's talk about what happened last night in the by-election in Alberta. Pierre Poilievre, just to recap, lost his seat in the general election. Something fishy happened there in the Carleton riding, and now that Pierre has won back his seat with a very decisive victory, he got over 80% of the vote in that Alberta riding. Now that he's got his seat back, it's fair game. Nobody has to tiptoe around it anymore. Let's talk about what happened in the last federal election. Let's talk about how Mark Carney whipped in and somehow became the leader of the Liberal Party and then became Prime Minister. Then we held a general election and in which the Conservatives had an unbelievable result, but Pierre Poilievre himself didn't win his seat. Something funny happened in that riding. Something funny happened in that riding, and I think it deserves an investigation. That's just me. We need to call out when there are things that just don't add up. And frankly, 1 and 2 do not equal 3 in this case. They just don't. It doesn't make sense that Pierre Poilievre lost. But it doesn't really matter now. Really, the people who lost are the folks in Carleton, that Ottawa riding that Pierre did represent so well for so many years. Now they've got I don't even know what to say about Bruce Fanjoy. He is their new member of parliament, and let's see what he does for the folks in Carleton, and let's see how well he protects the jobs of the civil service. But back to Pierre. He won last night. To start off today, I'm going to play a little bit of what happened when the results were in last night in that riding where Pierre Poilievre won. Listen to Pierre.
Thank you very much to the great people of Battle River Crowfoot. If I stand before you here today, it is by the grace of God and the good generosity of so many people, the first of which I must start with is my incredible wife, Anna. Anna, yes, give her a round of applause. Where did she go? Anna, you have been an incredible rock for our family. You've been the glue that has bound us all together. And to my kids, à mes enfants, Valentina et Cruz, vous me manquez énormément. Vous me manquez énormément. Yeah, my kids have been incredibly patient and understanding as Dad has been on the road a tremendous amount over a long period of time. And especially little Valentina, I haven't seen in a while, but I want them to know that we do this work for them and for all of Canada's kids. Thank you to the incredible Damien Couric, who has made, thank you.
That is the MP who won that riding originally, but stepped down so that Pierre Poilievre could run in a by-election to win back his seat. By the way, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Today is a weird day because, I'm almost inclined to take a victory lap. I think if you listen to this podcast regularly, you already know and understand that I supported Pierre Poilievre in the last federal election. I also am very skeptical about those results. But anyway, that's done. So let's talk about where we're at now. Yes, I am a Pierre Poilievre fan. I'm glad that he won his seat back in the House of Commons last night. Now he can resume being the leader of the official opposition, and he will have a job to hold Mark Carney to account. That is his constitutional duty as leader of the opposition, to hold the government to account. Pierre Poilievre won last night with 80.4% of the final vote. He was up against the longest ballot initiative. This is the one where they tried to put as many people on the ballot as possible. Over 200 candidates. Many of them didn't get a single vote. Zero. They didn't even vote for themselves. I think that that's all the evidence that Elections Canada and maybe even the RCMP needs to lead an investigation here, because they did it to him in the Carleton riding and they tried to do it to him again last night. There are forces out there that are trying everything they can to make sure that Pierre Poilievre does not get to face off against Mark Carney in the House of Commons. Well, this time it didn't succeed. I don't know if you want to call it too big to rig, or it was just that much of a decisive victory for Pierre based on himself and his policies. There's nothing wrong with a member of parliament or provincial parliament from stepping down to allow a leader to run in a by-election. It's happened provincially. It's happened federally. That's just the way the system works. You don't have to love the system, but there was nothing nefarious or illegal that went on. I find today that folks on the left are really having a meltdown. I'm being honest. It seems like they're having a meltdown. I called out conservatives when they did it, and I'm going to call out the folks on the left now. Having a meltdown that Pierre Poilievre won yesterday. You should see some of the tweets and such that are coming into my account today. Absolutely horrible, gross stuff. Insults galore. Calling me every name in the book just for posting the result of last night's by-election. Calm down. I'm going to tell you folks on the left the same thing I told the folks on the right after the election. Calm down. Catch your breath. Turn off the CBC. Relax. Pierre Poilievre won. He's going to assume the seat that he should have had all along in the House of Commons, leading the opposition. I don't know why this needs to be a contentious thing. I also don't know why you guys are shaming Alberta. You know, Liberals, if you want to make some inroads with the West, shaming Alberta for electing Pierre Poilievre is probably not the right answer, not the right strategy. But that's just me. You don't have to take my advice. Keep doing whatever it is you're doing. You're just not winning many friends over in Alberta. Let's play a little bit more of Pierre Poilievre's acceptance speech last night.
And we will secure our borders by putting an end to the Liberal open borders experiment of mass immigration, which has been a disaster. Over the next several years, we need to have more people leaving than coming, so that citizens in Canada can afford homes, can find jobs, and health care again. Conservatives welcome lawful, orderly immigration, but it has to be done in our national interest, the right people, and in the right numbers. In other words, we will fight to restore an immigration system that puts Canada first. And most of all, we need to restore the sovereignty of our country. Our nation has become far too dependent on one export market, and increasingly the Liberals are losing two trade wars, one with China and one with the U.S. Since Mr. Carney took office, $60 billion of net investment has fled the country to escape high Liberal taxes and brutal anti-development policies. This has weakened our economy and our negotiating position against other countries that want to take advantage of us. Those investors are taking their money to other places that have lower taxes and more favorable treatment. Meanwhile, U.S. and Chinese tariffs have actually worsened since Mr. Carney got elected, and that was an election that he ran on getting a better deal. Conservatives will fight to put Canada first, and we will work with anyone from any party. We continue to extend our hand to Mr. Carney and say that we want to work with any party to put an end to the tariffs and get a fair deal for Canada. In fact, we're proposing solutions, nonpartisan solutions, that will help strengthen Canada's hand. For example, we propose a Canadian Sovereignty Act to take back control of our economic destiny, This act would legalize pipeline construction, rapid mine approvals, LNG plants, nuclear plants. It would get rid of the industrial carbon tax, the EV mandate. It would ensure that Alberta could continue increasing its output of oil and gas. It would pave the way to get pipelines built right across this country, and it would eliminate capital gains tax when you reinvest your profits here in Canada to bring back hundreds of billions of dollars investment. This is an idea I hope the Liberals will steal, because our purpose,
I'll leave it at that. You can watch the whole thing on YouTube if you'd like. Does any of that sound bad? Didn't we all just agree a few months ago that the best way that we can deal with Donald Trump is to shore up things here at home? Didn't we all agree that one of the best things we could do is not be so reliant on America? And didn't we all agree, regardless of political stripe, that we need pipelines, we need to export our LNG, we need to really take care of ourselves here at home and find new customers and get our products out to the market? I thought we all agreed on that. What happened, and why isn't Mark Carney doing those things? Frankly, I don't know. I'm really struggling to understand what Mark Carney is doing. He's been the prime minister for a while now, and I don't see any evidence that Canada is working aggressively to try and make us less reliant on the Americans. It seems like Carney couldn't get a deal, and then he went on vacation, and we haven't heard anything from him. Just sort of hiding, if you will. Now, I don't know if hiding is the right word for it. He was out yesterday. He kind of spoke to the media. I played that clip yesterday in the podcast. You can go back and listen to it if you want. He doesn't even seem to be fully briefed on where trade negotiations stand. It's bananas. It really is. We got to get moving on this stuff. And now I think we will. Here's how Parliament is supposed to work. You've got the government with their ideas. You've got the opposition whose job is to hold them to account. Now, in a civil parliament, which I'm not sure that we're going to have, maybe, I hope I'm wrong about that. I would love to have a civil parliament where Carney could phone Poilievre and say, hey, listen, we both agree we need to get our oil out to different markets. I'm going to change some laws so that we can build pipelines. Will you give me your support? And do you have anything to add to this idea? That's how it should work. But it doesn't work that way now because things got really, really, really dysfunctional over the last number of years. Okay, maybe we can have a reset. Maybe Carney can work with Poilievre for the greater good of Canada. Wouldn't everybody like and appreciate that? Finally working together to save our country. Well, I don't know if Carney's going to do that. Traditionally, the Liberals don't want to do that. They're not very open to ideas from the opposition, not the least of which the ones from Conservatives. So where do we go from here? Well, Carney can try and put his own plan in place, but frankly, I'm not sure it's going to get to that. I'm looking down the line here, and now that we have a Conservative leader with a seat in the House of Commons, official leader of His Majesty's loyal opposition, this is the way things are going to go over the next few weeks and months. When Parliament finally resumes in September, there is a heck of a lot of work to do. There needs to be a throne speech. There needs to be a budget. We need to eventually talk about these nation building projects, and I don't know how long they're going to sit on that. We need to talk about our immigration problem. We need to talk about the economy. We need to talk about the housing crisis. We need to talk about our crime crisis and all the other issues that are affecting Canada. There's going to be confidence votes, and I think everybody remembers from the time when Trudeau was in power, any lost confidence vote will trigger a series of events in Ottawa. If the Liberals, under Mark Carney, cannot get their throne speech passed, that means they've lost the confidence of the House. Now, some people think that means we just automatically dissolve Parliament and have an election. There's actually a step in between there. Technically, the Governor General is obligated, since the government has lost the confidence of the House, to go to the opposition leader and say, Pierre, could you form a government? And if Pierre's being honest, he'll say, no, I can't form a government because no other party is going to work with me. I don't think I can get a throne speech passed either. But Pierre doesn't need many votes. He needs the help from the Bloc and a few other members. If the Bloc and the Conservatives were to have some sort of an alignment in Parliament, they could form government. They could, they would have more seats than the Liberals, assuming that a few other members and things fall into place. And I'm not exactly sure how many Liberals are all that happy with the Liberals right now. There are more and more Liberal members of Parliament that are coming out and calling out their own government for legislating the Air Canada Flight Attendants back to work, not the least of which is the newly elected member of Parliament for Milton. I don't know her, but I was pleasantly surprised to see her and Nate Erskine Smith criticize their own government for legislating the flight attendants back to work. Okay. There's volatility in the House. If the government loses a confidence vote, then we could have a new government. And if Pierre Poilievre can't form a government, then we have an election. We could be voting before Christmas, kind of like I've been telling you guys for a few months now. There could be another election before Christmas, or there could just be a change of government. Everybody swap seats. Conservatives would be the government. The Liberals would be the opposition. There's still so much that could happen. It's going to be an interesting few months in Parliament. But I'll tell you something. The way our democracy was set up and the way it's supposed to work, we have a governing party and we have an opposition party. And until Pierre got this seat back, we didn't really have an effective opposition. I mean, Parliament only sat for 2 weeks. Andrew Scheer stepped in and filled the role of Pierre Poilievre as leader of the opposition in the House. He did a fine job, but that was something that the leader of the party should be doing. And the leader of the party is Pierre Poilievre. Now, the other X factor here is Poilievre is still obligated to face a leadership review. That's going to happen at some point in the winter. If he does not survive that leadership review, that would trigger a leadership race. And that's the one that I think Doug Ford and Tim Houston and all these other folks are dying to get into. They want Pierre Poilievre's job. And you know who else wants them to have it? Liberals. Liberals love Doug Ford all of a sudden. And I didn't see that coming, but they do. They're really behind this guy because they hate Pierre Poilievre so much. So again, to recap, Pierre Poilievre won his seat. It was legitimate. This nonsense and this noise online that you're not allowed to do that and it's not legitimate because a member of Parliament stepped down for Pierre to run. All of that is noise and it's just not accurate. What happened in this riding in Alberta? What is it? Battle River Crowfoot? I don't know. I apologize. I had to look up where it was. I didn't actually know where this riding was until Pierre said he was running in it, until I actually looked it up on Google Maps last night. But Pierre is now their member of Parliament, and he is the leader of the opposition. If nothing else, we will have an effective leader of the opposition in the House of Commons this fall, holding the government to account. That is Pierre's constitutional responsibility as leader of His Majesty's loyal opposition. If the government cannot get the throne speech passed, or if they cannot get their budget passed, and there's a lot of reason to think, I don't know which parties would vote for this budget. We're going to have almost a $100 billion deficit. We don't even know how bad the books are, but the Liberals can't hide for much longer. They're going to have to present a budget. Would the NDP, the few members that they have, actually vote for a budget that's that bad? Would the Green Party members do that? Would the Bloc Québécois? There's not a lot of evidence that the Bloc Québécois will vote to support the budget. We know the Conservatives won't, so it's going to come down again to the NDP and the Green Party that would have to prop up the Liberals. And if they don't, then we could have a change in government, or we could be having a fall or maybe winter election. These are all possibilities. Either way, I think yesterday was a good day for democracy in Canada. We need an effective opposition because that is the opposition's job, to hold the government to account. Now let's move on to something else that happened yesterday. It was a summit of sorts between Ontario Premier Doug Ford and Prime Minister Mark Carney. This happened in Ottawa at the Prime Minister's office there on Parliament Hill. And frankly, I watched some of this. I was optimistic because Doug Ford went in there saying he had a lot of things he wanted to talk to Carney about. We know that Doug wants bail reform. We know that Doug wants interest rates to come down. We know that Doug wants taxes to be cut and a whole bunch of other things. But does Mark Carney actually want to do those things? Can Mark Carney actually do those things? You know, I speculated a few weeks ago, and I still think I might be onto something. Mark Carney doesn't have full control over his caucus. You can see some dissension forming in the ranks here, and it doesn't seem like he can crack the whip as effectively as Justin Trudeau did on most of these people. In other words, he might not be left enough for some of the folks that are in the governing Liberal Party right now. So is Doug Ford able to have any impact on the Prime Minister? Well, sure enough, they came out of that meeting with absolutely nothing to announce. We still don't know what progress we're making with the Americans. We still don't have a list of nation-building projects. We still don't have shovels in the ground. Taxes are still high. Immigration's out of control. Crime is out of control. The housing crisis is getting worse. Nothing got done, nearest I can tell. I respect Doug Ford for trying, but I kind of figured going in, he wasn't going to make a lot of progress. Let's hear from Doug Ford after he left the Prime Minister's office yesterday.
We'll just how to make sure that we have the most competitive market in the G7 by making sure that we reduce taxes, get rid of unnecessary regulatory burdens off the backs of companies, and compete. You know, I've always said, you know, that we can never predict what Donald Trump is going to do, but we can predict how we can create the environment and the conditions for companies to come here and invest in direct foreign investment. The numbers came out a little while ago. Mind you, it was 2024. We had 409 companies, $39.875 billion, and 25,000 jobs created in Ontario. But keep in mind, that's before Donald Trump. So we have to beat him at his own game and make sure that we're more competitive and onshore as many products as possible.
So did you guys agree to any concrete action on that front today?
We had a great discussion. Nothing happens immediately in that room, but we're on the same page. Mm-hmm. We have a great partnership, and we're going to work jointly together to make sure that we're competitive and we create jobs.
How likely is it, do you think, we're going to get a deal right now, percentage-wise? What would you put on the chances of Canada and the U.S. getting a trade deal?
Well, the main one is the USMCA CUSMA deal. That's really the main one. But in the meantime, we have to hold firm, and we have to create the environment. For instance, the steel sector. You know, the steel sector, we have to look at the large infrastructure projects, shipbuilding. Where Algoma up in Ontario, they do the flatbed steel, and make sure that large-scale infrastructure projects like a pipeline, the steel pipes come from Ontario.
Premier.
You know, not lost on me here. Doug praises Prime Minister Carney at every opportunity, and I don't even necessarily dislike that. Yeah, I know Doug's a progressive conservative, and I know that Mark Carney is a liberal, but I do enjoy it when parties work across party lines, when leaders work across party lines. I said it a few minutes ago. I think it would be great if Prime Minister Carney could pick up the phone and call Pierre Poilievre and say, let's work together to get shovels in the ground quick, to get our mining resources unlocked, to get pipelines built, to start selling our product around the world and bring back some prosperity and hope for the middle class in Canada.
On Tuesday, August 26th, it's FanDuel Futures Day, a new holiday for football fans. It's 24 hours of deals on all your football season predictions. So take a flyer on the MVP race, crown your champion in August, or parlay your division winner dark horses. Mark your calendars. This is your day for your hunches, your hot takes, your calls, and your odds. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel. Play your game. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York.
Whether you're into comedians roasting each other's life choices or turning yesterday's bad decisions into today's funny stories, Amazon Music's got the most ad-free top podcasts, included with Prime. Download the Amazon Music app and get in on the joke. Or go to amazon.com/ad-free-comedy. That's amazon.com/ad-free-comedy to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
I don't think it's going to happen. But everything that Doug here says he wants are things that Pierre Poilievre is offering. Pierre Poilievre wants the same things that Doug wants. The problem is Doug doesn't like Pierre Poilievre for whatever reason. There's some speculation it's because Pierre Poilievre didn't reach out to him during the federal campaign. I talked about that during the campaign. I think it would have been worthwhile for Pierre to do that, but I don't blame him for not. There was also a lot of people who felt strongly that it would be bad for Doug and bad for Pierre if they were seen buddy-buddy working together. Neither of them had a great reputation at the time. So where do we go from here? You've got Doug with all these things that he says he wants and we need as a country, but he likes Mark Carney. Mark Carney's not doing any of those things. He hasn't done anything since he took over. Then you've got Pierre Poilievre, who's been screaming at the top of his lungs for 2 years now that he wants to do those things, and Doug won't give him the time of day. It's a really weird situation, and I can only think that this is just politics. Doug has got it in his head that he wants to be the Prime Minister of Canada, and the person standing in the way of that is Pierre Poilievre. So's Mark Carney. But Doug can deal with Mark Carney after he deals with Pierre, and frankly, I think it's going to be harder to get rid of Pierre than it is to get rid of Mark Carney. Let's hear more from Premier Doug Ford's news conference yesterday after he left the PMO.
Was your sense from the Prime Minister now that Canada just has to accept that we're going to have tariffs from the United States until we renegotiate USMCA? Like, is there any movement on getting those removed?
Well, I won't speak for the Prime Minister. What I can tell you, we're united on the message of let's start worrying about how we can be competitive here. Donald Trump is so unpredictable. I don't even know if he knows what he's doing tomorrow morning.
Jesus, Doug. I mean, why are you doing that? Serious question. Doug, why are you doing that? He doesn't even know what he's doing tomorrow. Like, what is the strategy? Are you trying to sound like a tough guy? Is that what it is? Are you trying to be funny or cute? Because stuff like that doesn't land very well in America. It just doesn't. You know, I watched yesterday with all of those European leaders and the head of NATO and the head of the European Union in Washington with Presidents Trump and Zelensky. I watched that. To me, it was embarrassing that Canada was not invited. It was embarrassing. We've got China coming after us with tariffs, and we've got the Americans coming at us with tariffs. Why doesn't Doug ever talk about China? Is it because we don't grow canola in Ontario? Or is it because he doesn't care? Or is it because, as I've speculated many times before, Doug has a vested interest in keeping the fire burning with Donald Trump, because as long as he's talking about Donald Trump, he doesn't have to talk about the state of our healthcare system in Ontario, or the state of disrepair in our schools, or any of the other many issues that are facing Ontarians right now. Keep stoking the flames with Donald Trump. Get him as pissed off as you can, and then keep that fire going so that he doesn't have to deal with domestic issues. That strategy worked. It got Doug reelected. If you are that pissed off at Donald Trump or that scared of Donald Trump, Doug Ford looks like the hero. I think people are seeing through it, and Doug, that just seems petty to me, man. I'm telling you, it seems petty. You got to stop the cheap shots. Start being a professional. Start acting like a businessman premier, because you're dealing with a businessman president, and he does not like those personal attacks at all. The ambassador has already warned you. Stop the nonsense. He's already said our media has made it a team sport to pile on Donald Trump. Doug Ford wants to go out and make off-the-cuff comments like that? It's embarrassing, and it's not going to bring us any closer to a deal. It is not going to get us a tariff deal. All that is doing is just stoking the flames, Doug. I think you need to stop that. It comes off unhinged to me. It comes off as unserious to me. Stop making these stupid comments. Cheese slid off the cracker. Even he doesn't know what he's doing tomorrow. Just knock it off, dude. Just be the premier. Be the businessman premier and try and be as conservative as you can. Because frankly, what you're doing right now is not working, my friend. It is not. I don't know if you're trying to get laughs out of the liberal side, but it's not working on the other side, Doug. You got to stop the nonsense, because that stuff does not work. Taking cheap shots, personal shots at the president. What are you, questioning his mental acuity? What are you doing? Knock it off. Be serious. Act like a premier.
Let's start focusing on creating that environment.
But is there an
to attract
acceptance?
companies.
Is there an acceptance, I guess, from leaders
Well,
that we'll just have the tariffs?
Again, the Prime Minister will speak on that, but the President is unpredictable. He'll come out with some cockamamie thing tomorrow that we don't even know about.
So
right?
do you think that Mark Carney is being two elbows down in response to that unpredictability?
Not at all. He's doing an incredible job. He's working collaboratively with 12 other premiers and myself, and working as Team Canada. And he's doing a very, very good job, in my opinion. Put in his position, dealing with Donald Trump. Let's stop worrying about Donald Trump. We'll start focusing on Ontario and Canada and all the other provinces and territories.
Yeah, why don't you take your own advice, Doug? Why don't you stop worrying about Donald Trump and start worrying about Ontario and Ontario issues? We've got a lot of problems right here, my friend, and you're on your third majority government, and these problems still exist. You've been elected 3 times on a promise to fix the problems that, frankly, you can't blame Kathleen Wynne for anymore. Third majority government, and we're still dealing with some of the same nonsense that's been plaguing us since 2018. Come on, get off the Donald Trump stuff. Now, if Doug Ford wants to praise Mark Carney, hey, that's Doug's prerogative, but I think the average person is looking at this situation saying, what is he talking about? What has the Prime Minister done? He's doing a great job because he's got a good relationship with the premiers? I would expect the Prime Minister to have a good relationship with the premiers. What I want my Prime Minister to do is get something done. We all agree on what has to be done, and we haven't done it. We still have interprovincial trade barriers. As bananas as that sounds, after we all agreed they needed to come down, we still have these things. Nothing is being done. Carney has got to get moving. And if he can't get a deal done, then get out of the way. Or bring in Pierre. You know, the next time Donald Trump summonses Mark Carney to the White House, maybe Mark shouldn't go alone. Maybe he should take Pierre. I don't think he should take Doug Ford. Not the way Doug talks about him. Take Pierre. Pierre's got a different strategy. He's got a different approach. Pierre has got an idea for where Canada needs to be in these negotiations. Frankly, it seems like Doug's job is just to piss Donald Trump off. Okay, dude, mission accomplished if that's really your job. It just doesn't seem like much is getting done here, and that's very frustrating. Let's hear just a little bit more of Premier Doug Ford.
Premier, today is Pierre Poilievre's byelection. If he gets elected, I'm wondering, what's your advice to him going into the fall sitting of the Parliament?
Work with the Prime Minister.
How so?
Let's Team Canada. You know, let's put our political stripes aside and start working together collectively on large infrastructure projects, on other areas that he can cooperate with the government.
Last question.
Wow. I mean, I agree. Yeah. But that's not on Pierre. That's on Carney. Pierre can't just walk into the Prime Minister's office and say, here's how we're going to do things. Carney needs to engage Pierre. That's how this works. The leader of the opposition should not just blindly go along with whatever the Prime Minister wants. It's his job to hold the government to account. Oh, my God. Do we need a civics lesson at Queen's Park? Is that it? Do we just need to touch up on some of the things that we may have forgotten here? That's how the system works. Doug, come on. I really need more from you, my friend. I need more from you in the way of professionalism. I need more from you in the way of action. And if you truly do believe all the things that you've said you believe, then frankly, you're backing the wrong horse here. Doug, you're the conservative who gets along well with liberals. Why don't you facilitate a trilateral meeting between Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney? Why don't you do it, Doug? Get them both in a room. Figure out how they can work together to save Canada. Just sitting there taking cheap shots in the Prime Minister's office. I thought that was embarrassing yesterday. I did. And it's bringing us no closer to a resolution. Not at all. We're going to call that a big miss. But the Premier did do another appearance yesterday. He was at the Association of Municipalities annual meeting. By the way, they're not all that thrilled with the Premier either, because they're talking about homelessness. Cities have to deal with the problem of homelessness. And frankly, we've got a lot of homeless people. 80,000 estimated in Ontario right now. 80,000 estimated unhoused people in the province of Ontario, the so-called greatest economy in the G7. They estimate that's going to go up to 300,000 very, very soon.
I just had a very productive meeting with the Prime Minister, Prime Minister Carney. As I mentioned, we don't... Yeah, thank you. As I mentioned to the Prime Minister, we don't know what President Trump will do. And to be very frank, I think sometimes I don't even think he knows what he's going to do from day to day. But here's what we do know. We know how to build the most competitive economy in the G7. We know we need to make life more affordable, and we know we need to reduce the cost of doing business here in Ontario and across the country.
Does that match reality? What Doug just said, again, another shot at Donald Trump. I mean, Jesus. Refer to my previous comments. Does that match reality? Him talking about this raging economy and everything. Does that make sense to you? I mean, this audience here, the mayors and chairs here that are listening to Doug, cheering him on, just put out research on the weekend that said there's 80,000 homeless people in Ontario, and they predict it's going up to 300,000. He's talking about having the greatest economy in the G7? It doesn't match reality. It doesn't. I don't know where Doug's getting his info from or if he truly believes that things are going great right now, but my friend, they're not. Not going well at all, and the middle class is feeling it.
Last week, our government also announced that Ontario Public Service will be returning to the office 5 days a week. This decision reflects what we're seeing in business across the province. On Friday, Mayor Brown announced that the City of Brampton will do the same. I want to thank Mayor Brown for his leadership and encourage other municipalities to follow his lead. It will help bring the public service in the municipalities closer to the people they serve and will revitalize our workplaces in downtowns across Ontario.
It's one thing for the Premier to say, I want all of the provincial employees back in the office 5 days a week. It's another thing to tell the municipalities they need to do the same. Hybrid work is working for some people. If you can do it from home, why wouldn't you do it from home? Why would you intentionally add thousands more cars on the road during rush hour and intentionally cost people money? Why would we do that? I don't understand this new obsession with get back to the office from Doug Ford unless he just has some polling that says this is going to make him more popular. If you do work from home and you're being forced back to the office in a government position, particularly if it's not public facing, how do you feel about that? And is everybody going back 5 days a week? Because there's a lot of folks in particular in the education sector that are working from home. Curriculum consultants and such. Are they going back? Because nobody's given me a clear answer on that. Or is it just those that get their money from Doug Ford? And again, why is he telling the municipalities what to do? Get your employees back 5 days a week. I encourage you to do it. Why? Why do you care? It's not your government. Strange one for me.
I've had the chance to tour the province, handing out checks from our $1.2 billion Building Faster Fund to municipalities that are making real progress on housing. Just last week, I was in Windsor presenting Mayor Dilkins with a check for $5.2 million. But what was amazing in these tough times, the city beat its housing target by 213%. He knocked it out of the park. That ball's still traveling out of the park, so not too sure where Mayor Dilkins is, but thank you for your efforts and all the other mayors that are pushing housing. That's incredible progress.
I'm just going to point out Ontario is behind on its housing targets already. All that money that got sent off to the municipalities, and we're behind already. We're not going to hit our housing targets. We're just not going to do it. Why are you bragging about how much money you're giving away when Canadians can clearly see there's no results here? Very, very frustrating stuff. I'm going to stop it with the Premier because he's just driving me crazy here. This is not what I want from my Premier. This is not the direction I think we should be going. If Doug is truly believing that we need to make it Canada strong, it doesn't seem like there's any action. It just seems like all talk. All talk. Let me move on to the other thing yesterday. This is another positive thing. Yesterday, The leaders from Europe, NATO, Ukraine, and America all met at the White House. Donald Trump organized this, and he said, you know what? I want peace. I don't want any more people in Ukraine or Russia to die. Somebody had to do it. Somebody had to call for peace. And now we've taken a major step forward. I want to play for you a little bit of the exchange that happened in Washington yesterday. I want to play a little bit of Donald Trump here in the Oval Office yesterday with President Zelensky. This is a Q&A that happened.
President Zelensky, are you prepared to keep sending Ukrainian troops to their deaths for another couple years, or are you going to agree to redraw the maps?
Thank you for your question. So, first of all, we live under each day attacks. That today have been a lot of attacks and a lot of wounded people, and the child was dead, small one year and a half. So we need to stop this war, to stop Russia, and we need support American and European partners. And we will do our best for this. I think we show that we are strong people, and we supported the idea of the United States, personally of President Trump, to stop this war, to make a diplomatic way of finishing this war, and we are ready for trilateral.
Great question and a great response there. Happy to hear that. It seems like Zelensky really wants to pursue peace, and I'm happy about that because I don't want anyone else to die in this war. Let's hear some more of the meeting, it was a news conference that the president gave with the European and NATO leaders. Listen to this.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you for hosting us here. Can I start where Emmanuel started, which is we all want peace. The war in Ukraine has had a huge impact, particularly on the Ukrainians who've borne the brunt of it, but it's also had an impact on Europe and on the United Kingdom. There's not a family or community that hasn't been affected. And when we talk about security, we're talking about the security not just of Ukraine, we're talking about the security of Europe and the United Kingdom as well, which is why this is such an important issue. I think this is such an important meeting. As a group, I think we've had a discussion on the phone a number of times, Mr. President, but be able now to be around the table to take it forward. And I really feel that we can, with the right approach this afternoon, make real progress, particularly on the security guarantees, and your indication of security guarantees, of some sort of Article 5 style guarantees, fits with what we've been doing with the Coalition of the Willing, which we started some months ago, bringing countries together and showing that we were prepared to step up to the plate when it came to security.
That was British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Great. Good. Seems like he is in alignment with the Americans. Pretty happy with the way things are unfolding right now because he knows we're getting closer and closer to peace. Let's hear from the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni.
Something is changing. Something has changed thanks to you. Thanks also to the stalling in the battlefield, which was achieved with the bravery of Ukrainians and with the unity that we all provided to Ukraine.
Okay, yeah, something is changing. It took somebody to step up and say, it's time for peace. And look at that. When somebody calls for peace and they're wielding a big stick like America does, everybody comes to the table. All of the European coalition of the willing members were there. In fact, the only obvious omission there was Canada. Canada not included. The Europeans didn't insist that we were there. NATO didn't insist that we were there. The Americans didn't insist that we were there. And Zelensky and Ukraine didn't insist that Canada be there. That's why we did not have a seat at the table yesterday. I still find that very embarrassing. And you know what? Sometimes these summits, it's all a big photo op and then nothing ever happens. Well, the next step is a face-to-face meeting between Zelensky and Vladimir Putin. Then a trilateral meeting between Zelensky, Putin, and Trump. That's where we need to go. Earlier this morning, President Trump did a phone interview on Fox News. Fox and Friends. Listen to this.
What kind of assurances do you feel like you have that going forward and, past this Trump administration, it won't be American boots on the ground defending that border?
Well, you have my assurance, and I'm president, and I'm just trying to stop people from being killed, Charlie. Look, they're losing from 5,000 to 7,000 people a week.
There's your assurance right from Donald Trump. I'm the president, and I'm telling you there will not be American boots on the ground in Ukraine. Good. It's a Europe problem. Let Europe figure it out. But they were not making any progress until Donald Trump got involved, and that's just a fact. Joe Biden had 4 years. The war started on his watch, and it continued when he was gone. No effort was made for peace until now. And sure enough, as soon as somebody made an effort, we're ready for peace. Last night, the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, doing an interview with Jesse Waters. Listen to this.
Were you in the room when the president talked to Vladimir Putin?
I was. And in that conversation, what came from it is that, the president suggested that Zelensky and Putin meet. So we're working on that now to try to set that up for them to meet somewhere, which again would be unprecedented. And then if that goes well, hopefully the next meeting will be a meeting between Presidents Putin, Trump, and Zelensky, where we hope to finalize a deal. We're not there yet, but that's what we're aiming towards. And that's one of the things that was discussed today is how to get to that point. But just the fact that Putin is saying, sure, I'll meet with Zelensky, that's a big deal. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to leave that room best friends. I'm not saying they're going to leave that room with a peace deal. But I think the fact that people are now talking to each other, this wasn't happening for 3.5 years. This was a stalemated war of death and destruction. And let me tell you something. This president hates war. And he hates it. He thinks it's a waste of money and a waste of lives. And he has made it a priority, President Trump has, to bring about peace. If he sees an opportunity to step in and broker a peace, he wants to do it. He's been successful already 6 times in 6 months in achieving that. And he wants to achieve it with Ukraine and Russia as well.
Strong words there from the Secretary of State talking about peace. We're close. And that's a good thing for the world. We are close. There's still details to work out. Ukraine still wants security assurances. Yep, no problem, no doubt. Let's figure out how to end the war. Let's figure out how no more people get killed and work out the details. Not secondary, but almost in tandem. We got to end the war. That's got to be job one. I'd love to spend more time talking about this, but I realize it's a complicated topic for some, and I went way over, namely because of Ford there, so sorry, everybody. But there is one more thing I want to play. I'm happy to say that the Air Canada Flight Attendants Union has reached a deal. They have reached a deal. Tentative still has to be ratified by the members, but they have reached what I'm thinking is a negotiated, fair, collective agreement. Yesterday, that's what I was calling for. I said yesterday, Air Canada could end this. And sure enough, they started negotiating again, and they came to a deal. Turns out the federal government did not need to get involved. Here is the head of the Air Canada CUPE union talking yesterday. This was before a deal was reached.
What's the limit that you're prepared to exert here to try to make your point?
There's no limit. We're going to stay strong. We're going to stay committed to making sure that those workers can do the job that they love doing and actually be able to afford a roof over their heads, to afford caring for their families. And if it means folks like me going to jail, then so be it.
I don't know if he's being serious or not, but he said he was ready to go to jail over this. He was ready to go to jail over this. And that was one of the potential consequences for defying that government order. By the way, speaking of that government order, yesterday, the federal government tried to walk it back. They tried to make it seem like they're not interfering in the collective bargaining process. They're only trying to get to the bottom of an injustice. Let me play for you a little bit of the federal jobs minister, Patty Hajdu, talking yesterday.
On the weekend, I referred the Air Canada dispute to the Relations Board. Both parties, the union and the corporation, said they were at an impasse. But it's not too late to get a deal. In fact, the corporation and the union could sit down today and find a path forward together, and that will result in the best deal. I've also heard the allegations of unpaid work. It's unacceptable. Nobody should work for free in this country. In fact, we expect to get paid for the work that we perform. And that's why I've ordered a probe into the allegation of unpaid work in the airline sector. We will start this probe immediately, and if employers are exploiting loopholes in the Canada Labour Code, we'll close them. Nobody should be expected to work for free.
What a completely tone-deaf message after you legislated those...
On the weekend, I referred the Air Canada dispute to the Relations Board.
What a completely tone-deaf message after you legislated the flight attendants back to work after just hours of being on strike. This is a game to the Liberals, I think. Patty Hajdu, no stranger to controversy. You remember some of her greatest hits from COVID and stuff like that. How the hell she's still in cabinet is shocking to me. But after she did what she did to come out and put out this statement, frankly, I think it is asinine and insulting to the flight attendants, to union members, and to organized labor across Canada. She knew full well what the situation is. To pretend now, I had no idea there was some problem with some discrepancy with the flight attendant pay. I've ordered an inquiry. You knew damn well what the issue was, Patty. You knew damn well what it was, and you still legislated those workers back to work after only hours on strike. You knew what you were doing, and you did it anyway, and now you got caught red-faced. Members of your own party are calling you out for it, and this is how you try and walk it back. Completely shameful and disgraceful. Congratulations to the Air Canada flight attendants. Enjoy your pay increase, and I hope that it is a good deal and that we can continue flying in this country. And maybe, just maybe, this woke some people up. Maybe Air Canada shouldn't have that monopoly that they've got. Let's let foreign carriers in here. Let's open up the skies to anyone, any airline that wants to fly domestic routes in Canada. Let's go. Friends, I'm going to leave it at that. Tomorrow, less politics. We've had enough. These last 2 days were a lot. Tomorrow, it's a silent date update. Have yourselves a great day, and I'll catch you right back here tomorrow.